Howdy, y'all. We've had some questions about these heads for a long time. Even the one on 4G, we're not quite as worried about, but we do know that this one on 7J was missing. And the cat agrees with that statement. Yeah. So I've been warned not to take those pre-combustion chambers out of the head unless we absolutely have the parts in hand. But I know for a fact that this one on 7J is not working, and I know that I think we got one not working on 5T, so I'm going to make a tool today so that we can get those pre-combustion chambers out of a D4400 Diesel engine. Stay tuned. Over here on the bench, I got a piece of all thread that is about 1 foot long. This is the correct threads to get those pre-combustion chambers out with. I got a couple of nuts with it to make this tool, and this is the closest thing I could find. They didn't have any bolts or anything else with this thread pitch. Now this is definitely a measure twice, cut once kind of scenario, and we measured and checked the thread pitch on this over and over again. So now's the moment of truth. Let's see if it's actually going to fit. Oh, thank goodness. That looks like the right thread pitch. And it's screwing in relatively easily. These threads get kind of marred when those injectors get installed because you can see right there, they're just a press fit basically. That's it. For those of you wondering, this is an 1 5/8" 12 thread pitch. Very hard to find anything in that thread pitch. And I know what you're thinking, there's got to be a tool for this, and yes there is. There's a cat tool for virtually every tool that Dad and I have made to take apart this D4. And for those of you that are curious, this is exactly what they look like. And the problem is, they're nowhere to be found. Yeah, there's some folks that have them, they're all over the country, I can't find them. I do look for them, I haven't found one yet. And frankly, it's easier to do this than try and look for one. First thing I need to do is build some legs that can go over these studs. I found this piece of 1/2 inch, I think it's black iron pipe. Will fit on those just perfectly. So let me get them cut off. And looks like these studs are roughly 3 3/4 inches outside of the head. And I'm going to try and make it open-ended so that I could use bolts instead of these studs if I have to. And 3 3/4, right about there. There we go. I'll get those marked and get them cut. And there's no need to put a nut or a bolt in there to hold it from the top. All this is going to do is keep it from spinning. This is 4G's block, and we've been able to get all of these injectors out of here. Except this one. The bottom half of it is still in there. I've not been able to get it out. The injector will unscrew. I can get half of the injector out, but I cannot get the whole injector out. So we need to find a way to get that out of here. Nearest I can tell, it looks like I'm going to want about 6 threads here, and then a shoulder here to sit at the stop at the end of the pre-combustion chamber. So this will only screw in so far. I think I'm going to put this in the chop saw and cut this off right behind the nut. Yeah, I'm sure you see it sitting here, and when I get the welder out, I'm going to fix this too. There's our piece cut off. I'm going to go over and taper this so I can screw it into the nut. This is what it should look like. I got about 6 threads sticking out of there. I'm going to weld it in here in this nut. And then I'll have to grind the outside of the nut down so that it'll clear the posts on each side. Grandpa's out here today making sure I'm doing everything right.
You're darn right. I got to check up on this guy.
He's keeping up on it.
Yeah.
I found a piece of 5/8 here that's going to work perfect for the body of this puller. This is the thread adapter I've made, and it's going to give it a nice shoulder to stop on at the top of the injector so it doesn't get screwed in too far. But to give it enough clearance to go in between the studs on the head that clamp it down, I'm going to have to round off this nut. I'm just going to take the points off with a grinder. And there you have it, folks. That's the best way to ruin a $7 nut. Take a measurement here from the top of the lip on the pre-combustion chamber. Looks like it's about 3 1/4 inches to the top of that stud. But I want to make sure that I have enough threads that when I tighten this up, it can pull it all the way out. Alright. Looks like it'll give us about 1 3/4 inches of throw to pull that out. Hopefully that's enough. Since I don't have a thrust bearing, I did find this old Timken tapered roller bearing that I think I can use up at the top. The plan is just to sandwich this loosely between 2 of these washers underneath the nut that I tighten it down with at the top, just so it has something to pivot on. That should give me another 1 1/8 inches roughly of distance that I need to make up. I'm honestly a little concerned that this bolt's not going to have enough thread to give me the throw that I need. I'm just going to cut that plate with the chop saw so I can get it to the correct length that I need. Time to take this over to the grinder and smooth up the edges. I'm going to need 3 holes in here. 1 on each end for a stem to hold it, and 1 in the middle for the puller to go through. At this point, I'm definitely going to need a much more precise measurement here. That's about what we should have. That looks pretty good. I'm going to get a center punch there just to keep my center. Okay, let's find the center over here. I'm actually thinking that I might cut this out with the torch so I could weld those pipes in there further. That should be pretty close to the center. And we'll go ahead and square this up right here. You can make sure everything's all on the same line. I think that'll work. I might have to cut this out with the torch. I don't think I have a bit big enough. Final measure twice, cut once moment. Okay. Yeah, we're looking good. I got a kitty that's needy again this morning. That should do it. Got it clamped in here. Let me go get the torch. Okay, let's clean it up with the grinder. Looks pretty ugly, but it's going to work. That one might need a little bit of work. I filed it out to give that one a nice press test fit, and let's put it on here and see what we need to do. That's going to work out pretty good. Take it over on the welder, I'll tack it, and we'll check it again. That'll work, either way. Let me go over there and weld it down. Not too bad. I'm going to take it over and give it a try and see if it fits. Looking good. I think this will work. I got a little carried away and got a little extra fancy and stitch welded the top of those. But I'm going to go ahead and grind that out because it needs to be nice and flat so that the bearing can sit there. While that's cooling, I'm going to go ahead and weld this adapter in. Hopefully that'll be enough threads. The ones I counted on the factory ones had 6 threads. And that's pretty close to where I'm at. So, I'll go ahead and weld it on the top here. As soon as this cools down, I want to double check and make sure that this is going to fit in between those. And it appears to. So I think we might be okay. It looks like I'm going to have about an inch or so, a little over an inch of distance between the bottom of this plate and the top of that nut, which may or may not be quite enough. I have to think about this one. Fully assembled, it should look a little something like this. I'm going to need to shorten this bolt, and I need to have enough threads. Actually, I need the threads to start at the top of this nut. So I'm going to have to cut that off. And all I'm going to have up here is enough to get a nut on up here. And then that should be enough to get the puller down in there. And that'll give it that 1 inch plus of room to pull it up. One nut is about all we're going to get out of it. This is getting tricky. I've got some all thread, but it's a smaller size. And I'm very reluctant to use it, but I might have to go that route. It is grade 8. That is a good thing. But I wanted to use these big 1-inch bolts because they fit very nice in these bearings. Decisions. Let me think about that for a minute. Well, I did some digging, and I'm not really happy with myself because I bought some expensive bolts that I really don't need, but turns out they'll work great for the swing plate on 4G. To hold the hitch in place, so I'm going to go ahead and keep them. I found this piece of 1-inch all thread over in the corner, and it's probably 3 feet long. I'm going to cut off a section. It looks like it's got grade 8 nuts on here, and that'll work perfect. I won't have to worry about running out of threads. Should have plenty of room. I'm going to cut this piece of all thread plenty long to go up through here and give me enough room that it'll stick out above the nut, and I can also take it and grind off a section so I can put a wrench on it to turn this in to tighten it. Before I weld that piece of all thread to our adapter, I'm going to notch it out on the top so I can get a wrench on it. With each side notched out with the chop saw, I'll grind out the rest of it. I'm just going to use whatever corresponding wrench it ends up having to be. Before I do that, I'm going to start my nut on here to make sure that it'll come off and on. No problem. Looks like a 1/2-inch wrench will work. Not too bad for eyeballing it. I'm going to go ahead and unscrew this and make sure that my threads are going to still work so I can get it started. Looks like the threads will still work. Okay, easy money. I just screwed the other nut on there loosely to protect the threads on the end of here. I'm going to take a grinder and grind this down a little bit just to give us a little bit more room for the puller. Got that welded a little off the camera. I'm going to grind the welds down that are up a little high so it'll make sure we got enough play in there. I don't know why I just thought of this, but grinders are kind of like that old saying they used to say, caulk and paint are what a carpenter ain't. And I think grinders are what a welder ain't. Okay, let's take it over there and put it together and see if it's going to work. Gonna put a little spray lube on those threads. Right there. This thing's still kind of hot. Should bottom out. Right there. Nice. And that's why I put the notch up here so that we can put a wrench in it and tighten it up. 1/2 inch, good and tight. Let's see if the rest of it's going to fit. Oh, bingo. I love this. And I got a washer here. Gonna put the cup for the bearing, the roller bearing. Before I do that, I am gonna put a little bit of lube on there. I don't know, probably not totally necessary, but definitely not gonna hurt anything. Last but not least, the nut. Probably should lube a little bit on there. There we go. Okay, let's get a wrench and see if it works. I do want to reiterate that we were advised not to take these pre-combustion chambers out of here unless we knew we had a problem and unless we had parts on hand. But we know that there was a problem with this one, and this is on 7J's head. We're not going to touch the ones on 4G Lefty yet. I'm looking for the parts. I know there's at least one that I'd like to get into. Without further ado, let's see if it works. Golly. That is taking a lot of torque. It's moving. I don't know if it's pulling. I think it started to move. Yes, it did. It did start to move. Somehow, somewhere. I'm going to leave some pressure on here. I've got something else that's been bugging me tremendously. So join me over on the welding bench and let's get it fixed. So this has really been bugging me. And while I got the welder out over here, I'm going to get over here, tack weld this, clean all this off, and put it back up on the shelf with all our other spare parts. It's just been driving me nuts. I've degreased it, I've cleaned it. I'm going to hold it up there and tack it on there and see what I can do. Just gave it a little stitch weld. I'm going to grind it off. I think it'll be just fine. It'd be good enough to get it back out in the field to work. I'm not going to go nuts with this thing. I just wanted to get that piece in there and get it stuck in there. If I decide to use this, then I'll hit it some more with a smaller grinder and clean that up. But for now, this will keep the piece with it. It's repaired good enough. We probably won't even use it, but it can sit on the shelf ready for when we do. Let's check back up with it here. Does appear that it is moving and coming up out of there. It is out just slightly more than the other ones around it. And don't worry about this wrench. It's a brass hammer, and this is a cheap wrench anyway. Yeah, here it comes. If I was to make this all over again, I'd definitely make it shorter so I could get an impact on there. Yep, we got her. Finally got it to the point I can move it with the wrench. I don't think my bearing's doing anything. That's definitely a design flaw here. I need the correct kind of bearing. But as long as this is sliding on that washer, no problem. And these can be really bad to get out of here because they get rusted in because the water actually flows around them. Yep, we are out. There it is. Wow, you know, the inside of that head looks pretty decent. Okay. There's the copper O-ring that seals the bottom. And up here on the top, it just gets a regular O-ring. And these are virtually unobtainium. I believe Cat has them, but not for long. I don't see any signs of water getting in here around that copper seal, but it's hard to tell. I've been told that if you do take these apart, you cannot reuse those. That's a big, big no-no. Definitely looks like these are tapered with the head because they go in at an angle so that this sits flush. And I'm guessing there might be a spline or a groove so that you can line them up. I'm not too sure. Not really sure how you'd get them back in, to be honest. And there's the O-ring up at the top. I don't see any signs of leakage around here. And this cup looks like it's in very good shape. Now, this is also the new head. And you can see it's actually unscrewing off of the threads on my tool really easily. So that's good to know we didn't stretch those threads. No damage. No damage to the tool. It took it like a champ. So there it is. The pre-combustion chamber out of a D4400 on a Caterpillar D4. That was a lot of work. I'm tired. And no, you cannot get new pre-combustion chambers anywhere. Somebody might have an old stock one somewhere, but nowhere I've looked, I can find them. Well, there you have it, folks. That thing put up a lot more of a fight than I thought it was going to. I know that it was going to be stuck, but not quite that much. I'm a little afraid of the ones on 4G's head, so unless we have an issue, I think I might leave them in there for the time being. But we'll have to see. The good news is, my tool worked perfectly, and I'm glad I went with this 1-inch all thread instead of the lighter material. It'll work great. If I need to in the future, and I might do it, I might shorten this a little bit so I can get an impact wrench on this nut here. I think that impact would make quite a bit of difference in getting that loose. The other issue I definitely have is the fact that this is not the right bearing, and I could tell when it was really under pressure, it didn't want to turn. So I might look for a thrust bearing that's flatter, would give us a little bit more threads in here to work with as well. And I made most of this with things that we had on hand here in the shop. This all thread, the nut, the bearing, these plates, these pieces. But I did have to buy this. And yeah, we thought about trying to make this on our lathe. The problem is the bar stock to make this out of costs more than the actual 1 foot long piece that was the correct threads. And the nuts were $7 each as well. I think it was money well spent. I don't know. This thing's getting expensive. I'm purposely not keeping track of what I'm spending on this build. I know it's driving the cleaner nuts, but I just don't want to know. I really don't. And frankly, I'm doing this whole thing, the YouTube, everything for my son anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I gotta be honest, I think this one was a lot of fun. And I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Yeah, hi little Stripes. Haven't seen you for a while. Meow, nice to see you too. Big Stripes here over here. And not sure that we wanted to, you camera bomb you. What are you doing? You just can't resist, huh? Yeah. Meow. Meow. What are you two sisters doing? Meow. Oh, kitty. This is 2 times now. You're definitely going to make the blooper reel. You don't care. As long as you get petted, huh? Alright, like I was... kitty! This is times 3. Times 3, kitty! What are we singing this morning? Yeah, I like that tune. Meow. What? Are you stuck? Am I not paying attention to you? I wouldn't step on that. You're something else. Alright. Meow. You're just a happy kitty. Nothing wrong with that. So that's why we're making this tool today. What are you doing? You just refuse to let me alone today. We're looking for bearings, kitty. Come help me find a bearing. Now what you done? You got yourself stuck up there? Huh? Come on. Come on. Let's play pirate. I'll get you down. Hey, why are you guys still here? Well, if you're still here, you might as well subscribe,